Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, stop this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. Everybody in this context refers to us and our cats. You are free to feel however you want about Rand. He's a fictional character. Please don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Yeehaw, back in the saddle.
Yeah.
2024.
Okay, we're back. It's a new year.
New year, new us. That's not true. It was aspirational, maybe. I wish.
It wasn't just weird and entirely new people.
And I wish the books were entirely.
We opened it on 2024 and it
New
was
year,
like...
new Towers of Midnight.
Suddenly.
And it was suddenly good.
It was a very interesting instead of...
Just kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Everybody Hates Rand still. Your friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Emily Jushaw.
And I'm Sally Goodger.
Okay. So we've got a Matt chapter wherein he finally defeats the Golem.
Yes.
So it's nice to have that plot point wrapped up.
Check.
It's of course like an edgy action sequence, a little silly.
Yeah.
We're led to believe by the narration that like it gets out of control, but actually it's in control the entire time.
Yeah.
Except Talmany set a building on fire that he wasn't supposed to, I guess, but it all worked out fine in the end. The clever ruse that Matt concocts is to have the like sort of go on the offensive with the Golem and attack him in such a way that he goes into a gateway, you know, not like a regular gateway that just goes from point A to point B, but one of those skimming gateways that has the long ass falls through the abyss, which seemed to be a hallmark of fantasy literature. It seems like anytime there's any sort of magical travel, there's also some sort of endless falling mechanism that will be used against a bad guy at some point.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that sort of Chekhov's abyss fulfilled.
Yeah.
Matt makes use of the extra terangrial that Elayne has made. Talmany's life seems to be briefly in danger, so for those of you keeping score, there are a couple of homoerotic moments between, you know, like intense eye contact between him and Matt.
Yeah.
So.
They're communicating telepathically.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the goal I'm taking care of. I don't really have anything to say about that scene. I didn't find it particularly... it wasn't one of the better action sequences in this series, I'd say. Especially when it comes to Matt. It's a little drawn out and silly at times.
Yeah, not to like belabor the point, but like Brandon is attempting to like make use of unreliable narration in order to make this interesting. As Emily pointed out, like Matt is like, oh no, Talmany's to us, but you know.
But the problem is Matt has no reason to say, oh no, Talmany's to us.
Yeah.
Like, there's unreliable narration. There are a few things that if Matt had just not commented on them, it would have been like, oh, this is happening not according to plan.
Yeah.
That would have been the assumption, because it seems to not be any sort of plan. But by Matt going like, oh no, sort of.
The lanterns.
The lanterns. The Golem's going after the lanterns. I didn't expect that. And it's like, bestie.
You're a master strategist. I would assume that you've expected everything. So it just, the whole thing, which should be like climactic and fun and have these sort of like monster showdown vibes that you see in such like fun horror and monster of the week type stuff. And it just felt kind of anticlimactic. I feel like I've been using that word a lot in regards to Brandon's writing, and I'm sorry to Brandon, but even the like appearance of a gateway that he fell through, it took me a read of the pages to understand why, like when it appeared and what was going on. So
yeah, Brandon's really good at and capable at writing action sequences when he's working within his own mythology, but it would be incredibly hard to wrap up something that someone else has set the stage for.
Sure.
And yeah, this section just also has the usual hallmarks of another author trying their hand at Matt's character unsuccessfully. Matt has sort of a, like, hickish twang in his voice that he doesn't normally have.
Yeah.
He swears in sort of weird ways.
Right.
He seems a lot stupider than he is usually.
Yes.
And we've got the usual misogyny.
So needless.
Throughout, yeah. But at least it's done, you know?
At least it's done. The Golem is off the table as of baddie.
Yeah, R.I.P., I guess. The Golem was an excellent villain for a while.
Yeah.
Very fun vampire / Jack the Ripper amalgamation going on with it.
Totally.
That was fun to have in pursuit of Matt, so
you did good service.
We salute you for your narrative purpose. Now we switch back to Ituralde, who is in Meridon.
Good job. You did.
I'm really struggling with it.
You can call it Malden.
And he's still in Meridon. Not clear how long it's been since the last point of view we've had. It's actually unclear how long Ituralde has been in Meridon, period. Mm-hmm. Because it's unclear how long it's been since Rand's enlightenment.
Yeah.
Which, Rand was enlightened after he sent Ituralde to Meridon. The whole timeline thing is just confusing right now, especially because now we've caught up with the Perrin timeline, but not really. Perrin is caught up to the end of last book, so Perrin is still behind, and it's like, what's going on?
Yeah. It's really silly.
Anyway, it feels like Ituralde's been there about 3 months.
Yeah, poor guy.
And he's in a real state, but he is still using, like, urban guerrilla warfare tactics on the various monsters that are infiltrating the city. It's still unclear where any civilians are, if there were ever any.
Yeah, like, are there civilians in the Borderlands? Like, is anyone considered a civilian, or are they all
or, like, women and children out here fighting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to say.
But Ituralde's men have obviously been cropped down severely. He says he's lost about 75% of the people the little squad he started out with. We don't know about his full forces. But at one point they're, like, moving buildings and they hear what they think is Trollocs moving around outside, but then they realize, oh, it's actually soldiers, reinforcements. Bashir's men. So everyone's like, oh my gosh, is Ituralde here? And Ituralde's like, present.
And they're like, oh my god.
They're like, oh my god, man, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah, he's like covered in soot and blood and dirt.
He's like final girl from... Yeah. He's like... If you guys haven't seen the kind of comedy horror movie, Ready or Not, it's one of the sort of more classic horror movies that have been coming out in the last 5 years that are about, like, poor people versus rich people.
Right.
And it just has this iconic final girl shot at the end where she's been in a wedding dress the entire movie. And
Amazing.
She's absolutely drenched in blood.
Amazing.
And she just starts smoking a cigarette.
Oh my god.
Anyway, that's very Ituralde right now. He deserves a cigarette.
Yeah.
But they take him to Bashir, and Bashir's like, ugh. Don't you need, like, a nap or a shower or something? Yeah. And Ituralde's like, I'm Gucci, homie.
Yeah, who cares what happens to me now?
Yeah, he's like, what's going on? Where's Yoeli? And Bashir's like, so dead. He's just super dead. I have to say, I was surprised to find him in charge and not the other guy who was my cousin. And Ituralde's like, sorry, dog, your cousin sucks. So.
Yeah. And Bashir's like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Bashir's like, yeah, fair enough. Not my favorite family reunions.
Not my favorite cousin.
Not my favorite cousin, obviously. And Ituralde's like, also sorry, I guess, because this is the capital of Saldia, so I guess, like, you're home.
Yeah.
And Bashir's like, nah, you held it real good. You did so good.
Yeah.
And kisses him on the mouth. Like
I wish.
he deserves. If only. So then they're kind of like talking about next steps. What are we going to do now? And they're basically like, all we can do is just retreat, completely abandon the city. But as they're talking about this, they realize that they like look out the window and there's a huge bad guy army, even bigger than before. I know, shocking. That is there suddenly coming toward them. And they're like, yeah, we just have to leave, like, immediately. There's nothing we can do here. Then Rand walks in. Oh, Ituralde's like, gosh, I hope the Dragon Reborn made peace with the Shanshin. And Rand is like, I have failed in that, like a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, drama queen.
Yeah.
But also, title of your autobiography, I'm a failure. The Rand Althor story.
I didn't do anything when I was in charge of the world.
I did one good thing. Goodbye. And of course, Ituralde is like, oh my god, he's in his weird era.
Something's wrong with him.
You're like, ugh. What's he doing? What's he on? Rand's like, I'm so sorry, homie, that I just abandoned you here. And Ituralde should have been like, yeah, you should be.
Yeah,
and
fuck
slapped him
off.
in the face, but for some reason he's like, it's fine.
It's not fine.
It's not fine. Bashir's like, can we please leave? We're about to all be smushed and die. And Rand's like, no, I won't abandon this city to the shadow. He's like, and then he just like jumps through a gateway. He takes a couple of maidens with him, so at least he's sort of keeping that promise. But he basically goes out to the front lines and just does some like sick channeling for like fully an hour.
Yeah.
To just kill so many orcs.
Tens of thousands is
Yeah.
what Ituralde says, which doesn't feel possible. Like, at some point you'd run out of, like, physical space for that amount of bodies.
Ituralde's like, there's a literal wall of
Yeah.
bodies before him. And I'm like, this feels like such Hot Topic shit.
It is like a page and a half description of Rand channeling, and it's just like he's doing the sweetest.
He's doing such sick moves.
Yeah.
And so many things. And it's just like, if he could do this, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know? Like, after this, we'll see the aftermath of this, and Rand's like, I shouldn't have done that because it got really close to an actual confrontation between me and the Dark One. And also, I can't let everyone just, like, rely on me to do this. And I'm like, okay, but if you can do that, the only reason you can do that I'm aware of, is that you're a very strong channeler, and you have knowledge from the ancients, or whatever. But then, why can't every strong channeler just do similar things? We've seen, like, Nynaeve and Egwene, everyone, all the strong channelers are, like, good innovators.
Right.
Just because they don't have all their special weaves specifically designed to kill Trollocs, which, by the way, they should.
Yeah.
Trollocs have been around for forever.
Yeah, it feels like one's the Aes Sedai should just, like, have on lock.
They should be like, yeah, this is the thing we're good at, is killing Trollocs. But instead we just have basic fire bending. And it's like, come on, Rob.
Come on, bestie. Yeah.
So setting that aside, it just seems like, okay, so any strong channeler should just be able to take out an army of tens of thousands, which feels pretty overpowered. So it's like, what's Rand doing differently here? We don't know that he doesn't seem to be using an Angreal or a Saw-Angreal or of any kind here.
Yeah.
It's just him.
Yeah.
Which is just like a wild... We're clearly trying to differentiate here between, like, bad Rand and enlightened Rand. And I'm like, but bad Rand could only do the incredibly dark and evil things he did, like nuking a place, because he had that massive Saw-Angreal.
Right.
So it's just, like, out of nowhere that he can just do all this shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so he's tired afterward, but you still just killed tens of thousands of Trollocs.
Right.
This is just introducing an issue that will be prevalent throughout most of A Memory of Light, which is that just, like, physically, there can't be that many Trollocs.
Yeah.
When you introduce a threat, already, like, helms deep in Two Towers, you know? And the threat is just, like, a big army.
Yeah.
Eventually the army has to run out at some point.
Yeah. Like, there are a couple things here that are operating, or I think it's, like, helpful to think of them operating in, like, game mechanics. The first is the, like, auto-generating horde of bad guys. Like, that is, like, a video game concept.
They're respawning, yeah.
Like, it's like the Trollocs are respawning, and unless, like, your world has generated, like, previous knowledge that the monsters do respawn, like in Percy Jackson, you never actually completely kill the monsters. They go to the underworld. It may take a long time, but they do respawn. Mm-hmm. That has not been introduced here as far as we know, you know. Trollocs are mortal. So it is truly, like, how many... There has to be an end at some point. So we're, again, this respawning literal horde is not a functional, like, book mechanic. And then, as we've talked about before several times, like, there's a problem with the, like, power scaling and the, like, leveling up system. With Rand in particular, this has always been a problem. He seems to just randomly, like, jump, if we're using video game lingo, like 10 to 20 to 50 levels at a time, and it doesn't make sense what that means, why that happens, like, where he is in terms of the world's power system. And it's just really frustrating because, like you're saying, like, if we're dealing with a magic system, the rules should be applied across the board. And yes, Rand is the savior, and we're supposed to be like, he's enlightened, but, like, why is enlightenment making him more powerful? That doesn't necessarily make sense. So yeah, it's just like he's 200 levels more powerful than everyone else, and...
Yeah, like, from a game mechanics standpoint, again, typically in games you max out at a certain level.
Yes, good point.
Take D&D, you can max out at level 20, at which point you are functionally a demigod.
Right.
Maybe not kill tens of thousands of Trollocs levels of powerful, but quite powerful.
Right.
The only way you can make anything more powerful than a level 20 D&D character is to, like, give them lair actions. I don't know.
Yeah, or, like, magical items or things like that.
Yeah, but, like, what Brandon seems to be showing us here is that, like, the scale no longer even applies to Rand. You know, he's no longer even a playable character who can only max out at level 20. He is now functionally a god.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but then where are the stakes of the book now?
Yeah.
At that point, you can't just level someone up that high and then be like, and they still have problems.
They still have problems. We're still concerned about the Dark One being able to win.
Yeah, we still think they might die. You know, like, what?
How many more Trollocs can the Dark One have?
Yeah.
And, like...
It is also just, like, a problem of, like, as an entity, the Dark One has never really been introduced in terms of threat levels.
Yeah.
He's just sort of a spooky voice in the dark.
I don't even know if he can channel, you know? Like,
what's he gonna do?
How does Rand fight an entity?
Yeah, I don't know.
In any, like, functional way. I don't know. I'll be curious to see how it plays out. But, yeah. Yeah. Rand is the Dragon Reborn, but he is also just a person. So he should max out at some point. Right?
Which, to be clear, is what is appealing about Rand as a character.
Totally.
Is to have an avatar for the light does still have to be a person.
Yeah,
in a person-shaped limited vessel.
Yes.
Anyway, Rand does some sick channeling.
Great. And everyone's like, wow.
Everyone's like, whoa. Also, there's, like, a scream, and they go into, like, the next room, which is where the former leaders of the city, Bashir's cousin, had been under house arrest, and it's like the wife jumped out the window, and the dude clawed his own eyes out, Oedipus Rex style.
Yeah.
And they're like, the light, oh my gosh, the light. And they're like, they weren't even facing the battlefield, but it's like, you know, they were clearly dark friends having some sort of confrontation with Jesus.
Yeah, it's like they had psychic damage as a result of the attack.
Exorcism was happening here.
So
and everyone's like, oh, well, that answers the question of whether they were dark friends, which, as we said when it happened, wasn't really a question. Then we switch to Min's point of view as Rand and the others get back. Min's like, oh my god, Rand. What? Blah, blah, blah.
She's like a Labrador retriever. Rand could be gone for 30 seconds and she's never seen him before.
She's like, oh my god, let me lick your hand.
Yeah.
Rand's like, I can't do that again, it was bad. And then Min's like, oh, Rand, just so you know, Cadswan said she found someone. And Rand's like, yeah, let's go to her Ituralde, come along. They go to Cadswan, and it is revealed that Rand had realized that maybe the king of Ereddoman was alive and just had been snowed in somewhere. It's an extremely wild...
I thought he said the White Tower had him.
He said the White Tower, like, went to retrieve him.
Right.
And then, like, it was before traveling, so they were going on foot.
Okay.
So they were just, like, snowed in the mountains because of that long winter.
Gotcha.
He's like, so I just found him miraculously.
Sorry, I must not have read that closely. Sorry,
okay.
guys.
It's like, wow, truly a miracle, I guess. But Ituralde's happy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Min talks to Rand about her research, and she's like, there's something bothering me about Kalendor that says the blade will bind him by twain. And Rand's like, yeah, I thought that referred to how you have to be in a circle with two women to use it. And Min's like, I think it, like, makes you vulnerable in some other way. And Rand's like, okay, maybe that'll be how I die. And she's like, you won't die. And he's like, okay.
Might, though.
Live in denial, please. But they're all so happy because a king is alive.
I don't even know this guy's name.
I forgot to, but at least it means that Rand can't assign some rando to be in charge of Ereddoman.
Imagine being this guy and you get snowed in just by the luck of the climate. A very bad winter.
I mean, first you get kidnapped by a bunch of Aes Sedai.
That's true. First you get kidnapped. Then you get snowed in. Then you get taken to see the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah, then you get introduced to the concept of teleportation.
Yeah, that's true. You're like, okay.
So you're going through some, like, eldritch horror shit. You get taken to Tyr, which is not your country, by the meanest lady in the world.
Yeah.
And she's like, by the way, in the last 8 months or however it's been, your country has been fighting the Shanshin. He's like, who are the Shanshin? Everyone has almost or have starved to death. There was a nuclear incident.
Yeah.
All your council has fled. One of the Forsaken was basically in charge. But now everything's fixed because the Dragon Reborn on his walk with Christ has really come a long way. And by the way, here's your fanboy Ituralde. He is absolutely covered in blood.
Yeah.
And crying.
As a feral little gremlin crawling out of the ooze.
And this guy's just like...
Okay.
So anyway, he's my favorite ruler in this.
Yeah. Just the sheer amount of stuff on his desk to deal with.
Yeah, he's like, I'm never gonna catch up.
There's no way.
Yeah, but, at least Darlin's not in charge of your country, I guess.
True.
Whatever.
Yeah, at least it hasn't been annexed by Tyr or whatever.
Or the Shanshin.
Yeah.
Anyway, we then switch over to a Swan point of view, which, like, there's no reason for it to be a Swan point of view. I just want to say that. Like, we have completely, at this point, disregarded the point of view hierarchy.
Yeah.
Like, Edwin and Nynaeve are both there. Yeah, we're in Swan's point of view.
It's really strange. Like, the point of view hierarchy was one of the more, like, really interesting things about the beginning of the series, and I think helped it maintain a little bit more
coherence.
Coherence and cohesiveness as we move from different places. It's like we're getting what Edwin is thinking or what Nynaeve is thinking, and for Swan to just be like, man, this soup fucks,
Man, this soup is so tasty. And then they're like, it's because it's from Caemlyn. And in my head, I'm like, oh, because Matt's in Caemlyn?
Yeah.
That's been sort of the, like, unspoken pattern till this point, is that the boys make things not as bad.
Right.
Like, just earlier in that Matt point of view, there had been kind of, like, a throwaway line about how Matt had wine and it was good.
Right.
Not spoiled, is sort of the implication, as opposed to every other alcoholic beverage or beverage of any kind.
Right.
So that's what I thought. Later, though, we'll find out that Caemlyn is under Rand's special shroud of lust for Elayne and his unborn children, so that's why it's protected.
It's so gross.
And it's again, like, okay, if he can just do that, why isn't he just doing
Why
it
isn't he just
everywhere?
protecting the world? Why is only flowers blooming in Camelin?
Yeah, only in Camelin. It's just like it's like if you couldn't hate Elayne anymore, she's living in this paradise of beautiful roses and perfect food, while around her, in literal Andor, outside of the city, people are just starving to death.
Yeah.
And it's like, girl,
She's just like everything about her is just like princess in her tower TM.
yeah, and it's like, it would be one thing if Matt was having this influence over the city just on accident, you know?
Yeah.
But the, like, intentionality of it is insane.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Swan's like, this soup fucking slaps. What a way to start a chapter. I'm enthralled. Tell me more about the soup. What kind is it? It tells us broth and vegetables, bits of chicken, delicious. It's chicken soup.
She's having chicken soup for the soul. Yeah, for the Aes Sedai soul.
Anyway, this is just like a debriefing session of everything Nynaeve has been through with Rand in the last few books.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, good to know Sidon is for real cleansed. And Egg is like, yeah, that makes it less, like, slightly less upsetting that Asha'man and Aes Sedai are bonding each other now. And she's, like, still pissed that Asha'man are bonded Aes Sedai against their will, which, fair enough.
Right.
And Nynaeve is also fair enough, like, that was not Rand.
Yeah.
And Egg's like, okay, well, there's still his responsibility. And Nynaeve's like, yeah, so it was also Aes Sedai who, you know, did naughty things by torturing him and kidnapping him.
Yeah.
So are you going to claim responsibility for that? And it's just like, yeah, these are all valid points, but like, yeah, Egg maybe understand his perspective a little bit.
Yeah, Egg also says no. She's like, that was Eleda, and I just inherited it. And it's like,
Okay, well, that was Mazrim Tem.
and Rand just inherited it.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes people do bad things when you're in a leadership position that you can't control.
yeah.
It's just like, and like Swan is like, clearly Nynaeve's been spending too much time with Rand if she's agreeing with his thought processes. And it's like, no, it's a good thing that she can sympathize with him. I don't know why you guys aren't like really taking this in, except that you're women in the Wheel of Time, so you're idiots.
Yeah, and it also is frustrating for, like, Swan as an outside observer of Egg isn't like, it's good for Egg to have advisors who disagree with her. Like,
Yeah.
that's really valuable for a leader.
It's great for Nynaeve to be like, hey, Egg,
Yeah.
you're being a little unreasonable about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But Swan's like, oh, she's not enough of a yes man. Anyway, they go over the, like, plan to go into Teleron Riyadh and confront Masana. Edwin is like, I'm going to have a meeting with the Shanshan, with the Seafolk Windfinders and the Wise Ones to sort of, like, lure Masana out. Meanwhile, you guys are also going to be doing something to, like, set up fortifications in Teleron Riyadh, and then we'll capture her. And my main issue is like, okay, do the Windfinders know that they're the bait for a trap?
That's a good question.
It would not seem so.
Yeah.
But that's all they're talking about. And someone, Swan is like, well, maybe since the Wise Ones are the best at Teleron Riyadh ever, besides Perrin, who's been training for 2 weeks, maybe they should, like, actually help us. And Edwin's like, oh, that's a good idea. And it's like, girl, maybe you thought about it. Speaking of Perrin, he's so good at dreams and nightmares now. You guys wouldn't believe it. He's like, I should have started training earlier. And Hopper's like, okay.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't even know what to tell you. Let me go to...
It's like such a stupid little sequence.
I know. It's just like, let us know. Perrin's still training.
Yeah.
Then we go to Gawyn.
Yeah, trigger warning, content warning, Gawyn.
It's really a bad one.
It really is a bad one.
Maybe not the worst
As
one,
if the,
but
like,
quite bad.
baby blossoming rose garden is not heinous enough.
We also have Gawyn walking around. And he like talks to Elayne, and I just like, I don't know if Brandon or Robert or whoever are incapable of writing sibling relationships, but it's giving Folgers Christmas card.
Sorry, Ed.
You're my present. This, like, come on. The vibes are extremely weird between them.
I've never talked to my brother, either of my brothers, this way, and I
Yeah,
never
like, they
would.
try to do, like, bickering about some childhood incident, and I'm just like, this is not how siblings talk to each other at all. It just, it sounds like weird flirting.
Yeah.
It's extreme.
You pushed me.
It doesn't help that Gawyn keeps commenting, like, wow, I'm so in awe of Elayne, and how regal she's becoming, and beautiful, and she's fucking in bloom. And I'm like, could we stop referring to women as being in bloom?
It's so gross.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. At one point, he's like, she's beautiful just like our mother. And I'm like, where did the complexes
Stop.
start and end?
If this were your real brother, you would be like, here's my sister. No comment on her appearance unless she has a zit on her nose. And then,
Yeah.
that's
Here's
all.
my sister. She's pregnant.
Yep. And then you'd probably actually shove each other in the lake.
Yeah, I'd be
because
like, I don't care if you're pregnant.
the Cain instinct.
It's real.
It's real and strong. You gotta punch your siblings.
Yeah, if I see them, it's like game over. I don't care that we're all in our 30s.
Anyway, they're like talking, and Gawyn's like, dang, it's so pretty here. And Elayne's like, it's because because he just loves me so much. And Gawyn's like, bleh.
Yeah, that's an appropriate sibling reaction.
He's like, Elayne, how could you have fucked him and be bearing his children after he murdered our mother? And Elaine's like, well, he didn't murder our mother. By no metric is there evidence that he murdered our mother.
Yeah.
And also, I trust him to have not murdered our mother. You met him once. I don't
Yeah.
know why this beef with him. And Gawyn's like, well, I don't really believe you. And then they go out, like, paddling on the lake or whatever. And Elaine's like, Gawyn, what the fuck are you doing here? And he's like, well, I lived here. And she's like, okay, well, you weren't here when literally the only time anyone's ever needed you, so
Yeah.
it's sort of too little too late. And he's like, well, I'm here now. And she's like, but you don't want to be.
Yeah.
You don't want to have responsibilities here. You're just here. So, like, which is fine. You don't have to be the prince of the sword. And I'm like, doesn't he, though?
Yeah, I thought that was like, can you just
Yeah.
not have one
I
of
didn't
those?
think that was not, I thought that was non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And she's like, and Brigitte doing a fine job as the captain general. And I'm like, Brigitte does not want to do that.
Yeah.
Which, like, okay, if Gawyn doesn't want to do that either, fair enough. But then can we please find someone who does want to do it?
Yeah.
And will, if not enjoy the job,
You know.
work hard at it,
Yeah.
have ambitions, whatever. And Elaine's like, you should be protecting Egg. And he's like, well, maybe I don't want her anymore. And Elaine's like, oh my god, Gawyn, what happened to you?
Yeah.
And it's like, first of all, he's 23, so if he was like, I'm over Egg, that would be fine. You
Yeah.
guys are so weird about your crushes. But, he's like, Egg and I are fighting because I don't want to just bow to all of her whims just because she's the Amaryllincy, and she doesn't need me anymore, and that makes me mad. And Elaine's like, okay, well, probably that's because she needs someone who will back her up and actually support her, Support. You might have heard of it. It doesn't involve doing the opposite of what she tells you to do.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I don't want to do that. He says, I'm not sure I can be that man. And she's like, oh, I thought if anyone could do it, it would be you. And I'm like, Elayne, why? Why would you think that?
Why would you think that Gawyn was capable of, like...
Suborning himself to a woman. I know
Yeah.
he grew up in this, like, monarchy where women are in charge, but he has given no indication that he is ever comfortable with women being in power.
No.
He was like, well, getting back to stupid Rand, he's dangerous. You shouldn't be with him. And she's like, it's fine. Sidon's cleansed. Why do you hate his guts so much? And he's like, and she's like, it's because you're fucking jealous of him. And Gawyn's like, no, I'm not. And she's like, yes, you are. Because while you were stuck in the snow, he was off conquering worlds.
Yeah.
And maybe you should grow up about it. And he's like... And she's like, anyway, if you saw him, are you gonna duel him? And he's like, yeah, probably. And she's like, okay. So if you kill him, you kill Jesus.
Yeah.
Are you good with that? And he's like, I guess not. And like, anyway, then she leaves. She's like, maybe just chill out. and go back to egg. And then she leaves. And Gawyn watches her go, and then he, like, turns to the water and has this, when will my reflection show?
Yeah.
Moment, and then he's like, she's right, at least about Rand. I need to stop hating him. And then he just does.
And then that's how it works, guys. You just flick it like a switch. Off.
He's like, goodbye. I mean, it doesn't work that way, and it doesn't even work in this narrative. Like, Gawyn still sort of has beef with Rand throughout the next book and a half. It's just not, like, homicide level beef.
Sure.
Especially because, spoiler alert, he will find out that Morgoth is still alive.
Right.
So it's not like he doesn't have a good excuse anymore to be mad. But it's just, like, such a, you know, speaking of anticlimaxes, we've been building up this stupid non-rivalry between Gawyn and Rand, where Gawyn just hates Rand. Mm-hmm. And if Gawyn can just shrug it off after a stern talking to from his sister, it's like, no offense, but what was the point?
Yeah, what was the point?
I mean, there was never a point. It was an incredibly stupid plot point, because the only way to satisfy it in any meaningful way would be to have, like, Gawyn actually confront Rand on some level. Mm-hmm. But, like, you cannot have Gawyn do that and still be a sane character.
Yeah.
Because Elayne's right, you would be killing Jesus.
Yeah.
It would be incredibly wild for him to do that. So there was just no satisfying conclusion possible for this, so Brandon's, like, only way of handling it was just to be like, okay, I guess he'll get a reality check, and for some reason he'll listen to it from Elayne instead of the millions of other people who have been telling them this.
Yeah.
Which is not my experience with siblings. Again, you ignore the things your siblings
Yeah, my siblings
tell you
have
about
never
yourself.
been right.
My siblings aren't wise.
They don't know, fuck
They
off.
don't know shit about me. Then Gawyn's walking... Oh, I think he's just, like, staring at his dumb dagger that he found.
Yeah, very classic man behavior.
Yeah, he's just like, ah. And one of the... Remember, there are still a bunch of freed Daemon and Soldam just walking around the palace at Camelin. And one of the Daemon, who's sort of, like, being escorted around by an Aes Sedai, sort of trying to be deprogrammed,
Yeah.
notices it and is like, oh my gosh, how did you get that? It belongs to one of the blood knives. It is a blood knife. And Gawyn's, like, trying to interrogate her, and she sort of breaks down about it. But the Aes Sedai, it's not an Aes Sedai, excuse me, it's one of the kin. She's like, well, we have other people here who might know about it, including one of the Soldam, who's now trying to be a Daemon, and we think is trying to, like, you know, maliciously comply with the whole Soldam Daemon thingy by learning how to channel bad stuff.
Yeah, and, like, purposefully, accidentally do some very bad and dangerous channeling to prove that she needs to be
Collared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, like, okay, that seems like the subject of an entire other novel, but it's wild that it's
fascinating.
Introduced here. She comes up and is like, oh yeah, I know about that shit, but I'll only answer your questions if you agree to collar me. And Gawyn's like, sure. And we're like, what?
The Tricand family ethics
I know.
course that Morgoth was running in this place.
Nil. Nothing
Yeah.
going on. Chidi Anagonye would throw up and die if he stepped foot in here.
Who died and left Aristotle in charge of it?
Plato. Yeah, it's like, dude, what? It's just, like, wildly out of left field.
Yeah.
And Gawyn in his head isn't even like, I'm just doing typical cop shit and lying to get the
Yeah.
answers I want. Which, you know, isn't any better. But, like, what's going on? And the kin is like, what? And Gawyn's like, okay, I can't, like, legitimately do that, but I can talk to Elayne about it. And it's like, okay, hopefully Elayne is like, no.
Yeah, but
But what the fuck, dude?
what if she said yes, Gawyn?
Yeah, I mean,
Not like
Elayne,
he'd care.
don't do that. Yeah, and he's just like, that's fine with me because I don't care about the little people in my pursuit to be the world's dumbest detective.
And the world's most man.
Yeah.
I'm in competition for
Yeah.
most.
The most man. It's like a superhero. I am most man. Every Marvel superhero now. Most man.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, she's like, yeah, belongs to these assassins who are gonna die because they're poisoned within a few weeks or a month, but they're really good at their job and they'll probably kill whoever their target is. And Gawyn's like, they've just been killing random people, and they're probably, scoping the field. And Gawyn's like, oh, they must be after Egg. So he's like, I gotta get back to Egg. When someone delivers a letter from Egg that is, like, actually from Sylviana, that's just like, hey, bitch boy, get back here.
Yeah.
We didn't give you permission to leave. And Gawyn's like, I don't like this, so I'm not going to...
So I'm not going to go back to Egg, which is what I really want to do, because I got a letter that was like, the Amerlin was upset that you left, when all I want is for her to be upset that I left.
Grade school shit. What is happening? Yeah. Oh my god.
0 emotional intelligence and 0 emotional regulation.
And it's like, Gawyn, this is important information that you have, which... Edwin would probably take seriously.
Yeah.
Coming from you. But instead, you're handing it off to a messenger who you don't know will get there. And also, like, not giving the full picture. He's just like, tell Edwin it's some assassins and they can hide in the shadow. It's just like...
It's ridiculous.
I just, like, can't imagine being in his place. And if, like, someone I love was the target of assassins that I now knew a whole bunch more information about, I would just be like... Yeah, just gonna, like, get on the phone and pass that to the secretary.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, hey, teleportation's real. I'll just go there and deliver that myself.
Yeah. And be like, hey, person I claim to love more than anything in the world, are you okay?
Which is, like, not an excuse for Sylviana's bitchy letter, but what's trying to happen here is, like, dramatic irony.
Right.
Like, oh, if only she hadn't been such a bitch in that letter to Gawyn, then of course he would have come back to save Egg's life. And it's like, that's not what dramatic irony is. Gawyn isn't making a mistake that any person would make here.
Yeah, and like, Sylviana's letter, compared to a lot of stuff we've seen the Aes Sedai do, is like low-grade bitchy at best.
Yeah.
It's not like Catswan, who would have come and like literally spit in his face.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely disrespectful, and the Aes Sedai do not treat men well at all. That's not
but
untrue.
Also, Gawyn should be used to that. Like, should be used to filtering out the bitchiness and being like, okay, here's what's happening.
Yeah, that was my other point. Like, Gawyn's been working in the White Tower for at least a year now, serving directly under the orders of Aes Sedai. Like, if you've not built up a tolerance to that, at bare minimum... What have you been doing? Do you have any skills?
Killing people with swords. He is most man.
It must have been so hard for Gawyn to grow up with his desire to be most man, and Galad was better at swords than him.
Galad was better at literally everything than him.
Yeah.
Even critical thinking, hard as that is to believe. For the love. Well, whatever.
Yeah. He's ridiculous. I can't believe he's a real character.
Yeah, my mood is mad.
Yeah, me too.
So our next section will involve Perrin finally going on his long-awaited mock trial. And then we will start getting into this climactic sequence 2/3 of the way through the book with Perrin and Edwin in Teleron Riyadh.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what's on the docket. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks to Glenna McKenzie for our theme song, and to our patrons on Patreon and our followers on social media.
Yeah.
Thanks for a great year in 2023, and another one.
To another one.
2024.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. No updates. Other updates, as far as I can remember.
Do you have a sign-off?
I do. I, as you guys know, go to a lot of different doctors for various things. And I had to go to one a couple of weeks ago where I walked into the waiting room. I am 28, soon to be 29. And I walked into the waiting room, and there were like 5 other people who were all bare minimum 83. And those were all of the other patients. And so it's just like me and a bunch of incredibly old
geriatrics
people. Yeah. I was like, okay, cool.
Great.
Stellar.
Great.
Love this for me and my failing body. I don't mean this to be like mean at all, but they were so old, you guys. It's a miracle they made it to the appointment.
Oh, boy. Okay, everyone, have a lovely week.
Bye.
Bye.